the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, from God, Amen. كل سنة وانتم طيبين. Christ is born. Glorify Him. Today's gospel, there are so many lessons to learn. So we'll take a couple of them and contemplate on them. How can the Lord Himself take a flight to Egypt or flee to Egypt? And the first lesson that the Lord wanted to teach us out of this is that we run away from evil. So this is part of the wisdom. So the Lord Christ did not run away or did not leave out of weakness, but He wanted to teach us that sometimes the best way to resist evil is actually by fleeing from evil, as we've seen in the story of Joseph the righteous, when he ran away from his master's wife, so he doesn't fall in the sin of adultery, and this would be considered a holy escape. The Lord, He could have found so many ways to avoid this evil. With this way, He doesn't have to flee to Egypt. But as I said, there are so many lessons to learn from this. He could have, hidden Himself under the fig tree the same way as Nathanael was hidden, or He can, as Moses was kept in the middle of the river in a basket, and God saved him the same way the child Jesus could have been saved. But the whole thing is a part of God's plan, and this is part of that. God wanted the Lord to come to Egypt and to bless Egypt. And Egypt at that time represented the whole world in terms of that they are the Gentile, the people that, people don't believe in God and worship idols. So that the Lord, part of His plan was to go to those nations, and it was Egypt at that time, so He can preach, the Christianity to them. And of course, one day all of Egypt became, a great church, and many saints, great saints came out of Egypt. And we found 3 prophecies in the book of Isaiah, the chapter 19, talking about Egypt. The first one in the chapter, it says, "Behold, the Lord rides on a swift cloud and will come to Egypt." And the fathers tell us that the swift cloud is Saint Mary. And then in the middle of the chapter, you find another prophecy about Egypt. It says, "In that day there will be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt." And literally, we do have an altar for Deir al-Muharra, and this is the middle of Egypt, as they say. That's where the Christ was, and there is an altar there. And of course, the last one in the book of Isaiah, that in chapter 19, the last prophecy is, "Blessed is Egypt, my people." And Egypt, my people, He calls them His, is not just, any people. And I'm not saying that because, I'm originally born from Egypt. This is very much the only country that Christ visited outside of His birthplace. So God's love was great that He came to visit people that they don't even worship Him, people that they are worship idols, but He cares about everyone. This means that God, in the middle of my own sin and my own worshiping myself, and that God can come and visit me because He is good and He is a lover of mankind. So it gives us hope that He loves us, and despite our weakness. So God is calling each one of us, and we have to respond to His calling. As in Psalm it says, "Today, if you will hear His voice, do not harden your hearts." So really what's required from us is just to, open our hearts, open our ears to hear God's message. And when I respond to this message and I don't harden my heart, then God will take me step by step from glory to glory. And the last thing that we heard today in the Bible as well, in the gospel today, is, "Out of Egypt I have called my son." And this is, I say the same, "O Lord, I am your son as well. Please call me and I will follow you." So this is part of it. The second lesson that we can learn from the divine leadership or the life of surrender, because we find that Saint Joseph the righteous, that he did not move or did not do anything unless it was an instructions from heaven. And it says, "Arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt and stay there until I bring you a word." So, Saint Joseph takes the message, he acts on it quickly, he does not, ask questions, and it doesn't even ask how long I'm going to stay there. I am an older man, I'd like to die in my country. He didn't do any of this, he just acted on it. Then the angel later on comes to him in Egypt and say, "Arise, take your younger child and his mother and go to the land of Israel." Same thing, he just followed the instructions because God's plan always successful. And we find this life of surrender with Saint Joseph is amazing. He is a saint that he could have doubted his faith at that time, because how was God incarnate is that you ask me to accept and to take Saint Mary and take the child and all of this, and now I know he's God, then all of a sudden he is running away from just a person or a man. So this could have put him in doubt, and we often fall in doubt in God's wisdom, and this is just because our knowledge is not comparable to God. So all of this, he did not ask or question God's plan for him, and he told them that to take the child and his mother. And interesting that we see that the Bible or the Gospel is saying to take the child and his mother. Even if the child is so young and the mother, Saint Mary, that she is older, he did not take Saint Mary and the child, because now, since the child is born, because he is God, everything rotates around him. And the same thing, we fathers advise us to do the same thing. Take the child, take Christ in our life through prayers, and his mother as intercessor in our life. So we should take the same as Saint Joseph did. We take that child and take his mother as well. And so this way he can bless us. Egypt was one of the countries that was looking for the true God. Egypt always knew there is life after death. They were actually making gods and sell gods because they knew there is something there. They just didn't know the right path, how to get there, how to get to that second life. They knew about resurrection, but they don't know how to get there. And when God finds that someone, his heart is in the right place like this, he comes to him. Same way as Saint Moses, the strong, when he was looking to heaven and looking who are the true God? Is it the sun? No. Is it the fire? No. And when he was soul searching for the true God, God revealed himself to him and show him the true path. That's what happened with Egypt. And in Egypt, that every time that Christ went anywhere, the idols were falling on their faith, and that's how Egypt became Christian, because they discovered that all these idols that created by their own hands and demon possessed, that it is not true gods. And we see the prophecy also, it says the idols of Egypt will totter at the presence, and the heart of Egypt will melt in its midst. And this is how Egypt one day became all a Christian country. The third lesson that we can learn from this flight to Egypt is the tribulations and afflictions that in the life of the Lord Christ since he was a baby. So everything was, since his birth, was so many things that hard for him, as the Bible tells us, and many are the afflictions of the righteous. And the Lord himself said, go through the narrow gate. So all this advice that he gave us, he himself went through it. And that makes us to know what to expect. And it was a very tough trip to go with a child from Palestine to Egypt, very long journey. So many things that happened, I'm sure, in a way. And he moved, is not even just got to Egypt and stayed at the first spot as the angel told him go to Egypt, but because he moved in so many places. Because every time he went into a city, the idols in this city was collapsing on their faces, and the city more or less kicked him out, and this is how he moved from one city to another. In a way, it looks difficult, but was a great blessing, because if he stayed at the first stop in Egypt, he visited that spot in Egypt. But because of all what's happening with all these idols and people telling them to leave their cities, they visited all of Egypt, and was a great blessing, and it's a trip that it's worth trying to visit as well. But we don't stop at, that the many are afflictions of the righteous. The rest of the verse, it says, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. So God always have a plan, even if things are tough in the beginning, but it's always have a plan for success later on. But that means I need to thank God during these trials that we go through, because He knows He went through tribulations and afflictions Himself, so He can help us. And as in the book of Hebrews it says, for in that He Himself has suffered, being tempted, He is able to aid those who are tempted. The other point that we can learn, that the Lord Christ did not use His divinity to make it easy for His human nature. He can issue by His divinity, excuse me, that He can He can die in no time by just God using His divinity. As you know, Herod, the second Herod, later on in life, when he was talking like as if he's God and he's the sound of a God, then the angel of the Lord struck him dead. And so God could have done something like this to the first Herod, but He did not use, even if He made so many miracles, He was not out of weakness that He did not use His divinity, but it's out of, He does not want to make things easier for Himself. Also, one of the points that for hiding His divinity are not using His divinity, because the devil, since the Christ was born, was always trying to find out, is this the Messiah or not? Is this what we are waiting for or not? Because, of course, if the devil knew this is Christ, he would try to prevent the salvation. He would try to prevent Christ from offering Himself on the cross. And as St. Paul says, for had they known, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. Also, if we see in the glory of Christ, we cannot handle that. It's just too much for the human being to see that. It says, you cannot see my face, for no man shall see me and live. Just translate some of that in Arabic. النهارده في الهروب، رحلة الهروب إلى مصر، في منها كذا درس نتعلمه، إن إحنا الهروب في حد ذاته أحيانا هروب من الشر في حد ذاته ده هروب مقدس، وليس مش عن ضعف من السيد المسيح إن هو هرب عن مصر إلى مصر، لكن هو الهروب بتاعه عشان يعلمنا إن إحنا في وقت الشر ممكن دي تبقى نوع من الحكمة إن إحنا نهرب. كان ممكن يلاقي طرق كتيرة خالص إن هو ما يهربش من هيرودس، ولكن كان ممكن زي ما نثنائيل خباه تحت الشجرة عشان يحافظ على حياته، زي ما موسى أنقذه بردك عشان من الموت، فكان يقدر يعمل حاجة زي كده هوت. لكن ربنا كان عنده خطة إلهية لمجيئه لمصر علشان يبارك مصر، لأن مصر في الوقت دوت كان تمثل العالم كله، تمثل الوثنية، فربنا كان يعني عايز يوصل للجميع، فدي كان خطة من الخطة بتاعته. لأنه كان بنروح يعني ربنا نفسه عارف إنه في يوم من الأيام مصر دي هتبقى كنيسة عظيمة، ويعني باركها من أجل الموضوع ده. ونلاقي في 3 نبوات عن مصر في سفر أشعياء في الإصحاح 19، يقول هو ذا الرب راكب على سحابة سريعة وقادم إلى مصر. والسحابة هنا اللي هي السيدة العذراء، الآباء بيفسروها بكده. وبعد كده في تاني في النبوة التانية بتقول في ذلك اليوم يكون مذبح للرب في وسط أرض مصر. وزي ما بيقولوا إنه فعلا المذبح اللي موجود في دير المحرق هو فعلا موجود بالفعل في أرض مصر يعني جغرافيا. وآخر نبوة كانت موجودة عن مصر اللي هي مبارك شعبي مصر، مش مبارك شعب مصر، يعني ربنا قرر إنه ياخدنا كده إحنا ولاده. ومش احنا عشان احنا مصريين احنا اولاده، يعني واحد اتولد هنا في كندا يبقى هو كده ما خدش البركه دي. مبارك شعبي مصر، لان كلنا في الوقت دوت كنا بنمثل اللي هو الغير المؤمنين، فربنا بيحبنا محبه خاصه. فدي كانت يعني حاجة من ان هو ربنا يعني بيدور على الناس اللي بعاد عنه. يعني مصر في وقتها زي ما قلنا بتمثل الوثنية، ولكن ربنا من انه صالح ومحب للبشر كان بيدور على الجميع. احنا بس مطلوب مننا ان احنا نفتح قلبنا لما ربنا ينادينا ونتغير. احيانا بنفضل بال20-30 سنة عارف ضعفاتي ومش عايز اتغير، مبسوط كده، مش عايز اغير حاجة لاني مش عايز اتعب، انا مبسوط بالاسلوب بتاعي دهوت، مع ان انا عارف ان بقى غلط لكن ما زلت مصمم على ان امشي بالاسلوب بتاعي. يقول كده ايه: اليوم ان سمعتوا صوته فلا تقسوا قلوبكم. كان في كده كتاب زمان نازل اسمه الله يدعو، God is calling. فهو لما ربنا يدعونا لازم نكون عندنا السنسيتيف ايرز، يبقى عندنا ودن كده حساسة ان احنا نسمع كلام ربنا لما ينادينا علشان احنا نتغير. وفي الانجيل بتاع النهارده سمعنا طبعا اللي هي في سفر حوزية من مصر: دعوت ابني. فبقول له يا رب زي ما انت دعوت ابنك من مصر ادعوني انا كمان، انا محتاج الابوة ديت، ادعوني فاتبعك. الدرس الثاني اللي هو في نتعلمه القيادة الإلهية وحياة التسليم. ازاي يوسف النجار ان هو كان ما كانش يتحرك غير بتعليمات من السماء. الملاك يقول له روح خد الصبي وامه واهرب الى مصر، ينفذ، ما بيناقش الكلام. يقول له قوم خد الصبي وامه واذهب الى ارض اسرائيل، نفس الكلام. ما وقعدش يشك في الرساله نفسها. ازاي انتوا اقنعتوني ان انا يعني غطي على الام اللي حامل من الروح القدس وقلت لي ده اله، وفي الاخر الاقي الاله ده بيهرب. ما عملش حاجه من كده لان هو كان واثق ان ربنا كلامه وخطته حقيقيه. احنا محظوظين ان احنا عندنا كنيسه في اوتوا على اسمه، بركه كبيره كلنا. وطبعا لما قال له يعني خد الصبي وامه، فبيوصونا ان احنا نعمل نفس الحكايه، احنا ناخد الصبي وامه في حياتنا. اخد الصبي الرب يسوع من خلال الصلاه في حياتي، واخد امنا العذراء شفيعه لنا كل يوم. مصر كان دايما بتدور على الاله الحقيقي، كانت عارفة ان في حياة الخلود. الفراعنة كانوا عارفين ان الحياة الخلود دي موجودة، وان هم في حياة بعد الموت، فكان يستاهلوا ويستحقوا ان ربنا يفتقدهم ويعرفهم المسيحية، ويعرفهم ان في سماء وفي كل دوت. وطبعا اللي أكد للمصريين الموضوع ده وخلاهم يقبلوا السيد المسيح بعد ما شافوا أن كل الأوثان اللي هم بيعملوها وبيصنعوها كانت بتنهار لمجرد أن السيد المسيح عدى في البلد دهيت. ومصر كانت زمان فعلا معروفة أنها بتصنع أوثان وتبيعها، يعني الناس تيجي من الدول التانية علشان كل واحد يختار إله من مصر، لأن هم دول اللي بيصنعوا الآلهة، ويشتري الإله دهوت وياخده ويرجع بيه بلده عشان يعبده. فكانت مصر عارفة الفكرة لكن ما كانتش على الطريق الصح، لكن كان عندها فكرة كويسة فاستحقوا أن ربنا يزورهم. الحاجة الثالثة الضيقات في حياة السيد المسيح. نلاحظ ان هو كانت موجودة معاه من اول ولادته، فزي بيقول الكتاب كثيرة هي احزان الصديقين. وكان السيد المسيح بيقول لنا ادخلوا من الباب الضيق، وطبعا هو نفسه دخل من الباب الضيق، فيعني مثال لينا عشان ما حدش فينا يفتكر ان الهنا كان قاعد على كرسي في السماء مستريح وهو سايبنا احنا اللي نتعذب في الارض. عدى في رحلة شاقة جدا من فلسطين لمصر، وكانت متعبة، وكان شبه بيطردوا من كل بلد يخشوا فيها بسبب ان الاوثان كانت بتقع في البلد دهيت، وبسبب ان هم كانوا يطردوا من بلد لبلد. كانت الرحلة طويلة وزار اماكن كتيرة جدا في مصر، فكانت حاجة يعني كويسة لمصر، على عكس ان هو لو كان دخل لأول نقطة في مصر وقعد فيها يمكن ما هي دي النقطة الوحيدة كان اللي هتبقى فيها البركة، على عكس مصر كلها اتبركت بيه يعني. بس زي ما بنقول ان هي كثيرة هي احزان الصديقين، برضك بقية الآية بتقول ومن جميعها ينجيهم الرب. فاحنا في وقت الضيقة نشكر ربنا لأنه عارفين إنها في ضيقة فعلا، لكن ربنا هو هينجينا منها لأنه هو بيحبنا. بيقول لأنه فيما هو قد تألم مجربا يقدر أن يعين المجربين. فدي ما بقاش خايفين من الضيقة لأن ربنا إيده موجودة في وسط الضيقة. رابع حاجة إنه نتعلمها في الموضوع ده إن السيد المسيح ما استخدمش لاهوته من أجل راحة ناسوته. هو كان يعني رغم إن عمل معجزات كتير فما عندوش ضعف إن هو يستخدم لاهوته، لكن مع نفسه رفض المبدأ دوت. أنا مش هريح نفسي أو مش هريح الناسوت باستخدام اللاهوت. كان ممكن بسهولة جدا يصدر أمر إن هيرودس يموت، زي ما أنتم عارفين القصة بتاع هيرودس الثاني لما تكلم كإله والناس مدحوا فيه وقبل المجد فضربوا الملاك ومات في الحال. كان ممكن بكل سهولة لمجرد إن هو هيرودس الأولاني يقول أنا هموت السيد المسيح كان الملاك يضربه في الحال مثلا، لكن ما استخدمش السيد المسيح أي حاجة عشان يريح الناسوت بتاعه. فكان والحاجة ان كان السيد المسيح دايما بيحاول يخفي اللاهوت بتاعه عن الشيطان، لان الشيطان كان متحير فيه طول الوقت، انت ولا مش انت المنتظر، انت اللي هتيجي يعني ويهزم الشياطين. فكان دايما فلما يعرف ان الشيطان يعرف المسيح اتولد ويبتدي يقلق ان هو ده المخلص، ويبتدي يشوف اذا كان نعطل يعني طريق الصلب، ان ازاي المسيح ما يقدمش نفسه على الصليب. لما يلاقيه بيهرب من وجه انسان فكان الشيطان يتشكك يقول لا اكيد مش هو، مش ممكن يكون اله يهرب من وجه انسان. فدي كانت بردك من خطة ربنا في الموضوع ده هو انه ما يستخدمش لاهوته، لانه كمان لو عرفوا ان هو لو الشيطان عرف زي ما بيقول ان هو يقول فلأنهم لو عرفوا لما صلبوا رب المجد. والحاجة التانية يقول ان احنا لو كان ظهر لاهوته ظهر لينا ما كناش نقدر نشوفه بعينينا، ما نستحملش. يعني موسى لمجرد بس انه شاف الناس كان لازم يلبس برقع، فما احنا لو شفنا سيد المسيح مباشرة اللاهوت بتاعه. فيقول لا تقدر ان ترى وجهي لان الانسان لا يراني ويعيش. فدي كان الدرس الرابع ان احنا يعني السيد المسيح ما استخدمش لاهوته من راحة ناسوت. يبقى الملخص بتاعنا انه the main reasons, three reasons if we remember just those three, the main reasons for the escape from Egypt is to teach us how to escape from the evil. This is sometimes it's a good way. Also, the second reason Christ left to Egypt is to hide his divinity from the devil so he doesn't prevent the crucifixion. And the third main reason is to bless Egypt, and Egypt in this represents all of the Gentiles and idol worshipper at that time. And السيد المسيح قعد في مصر تقريبا 4 سنين إلا شهرين. ربنا يدينا الحكمة ونعرف إمتى نهرب من الشر وإمتى نقاوم إبليس، والمجد لإحنا الدائم إلى أبد أبدين آمين.